Welcome to Live Long Better. Live longer, age better. A brand new fitness feature from the Not Old Better Show and the American Council on Exercise, ACE. This is where science meets strength, and aging is just another word for thriving. Joining us always is Dr. Sabrena Jo, Senior Director of Science and Education at the American Council on Exercise. She's here to break down the real research and share how movement, mindset, and motivation can help you live longer and age better. Get ready to move smarter, feel stronger, and live fully. And now, here's your host, the award-winning Paul Vogelzang.
Thank you and welcome to Live Long Better. Live Longer, Age Better, our brand new fitness feature from the Not Old Better Show and the American Council on Exercise, featuring Dr. Sabrena Jo. I'm Paul Vogelzang, and I am honored to be with you today. You're hearing that familiar intro music to our program, and I hope it brings you right into the space we've created for insight, optimism, and action. Today, we're talking about something that doesn't always get the spotlight in fitness conversations: rest. Not quitting, not giving up, but real restorative recovery. Because if we want to keep doing what we love as we age, recovery isn't optional, it's essential. Our guest today, our returning guest, is Dr. Sabrena Jo, the Senior Director of Science and Education of the American Council on Exercise. She's back with us to talk about how recovery supports long-term movement, mental clarity, emotional resilience, and longevity. We will explore with Dr. Jo why older adults often overlook recovery, how to know if you're overdoing it, and the subtle signs your body might be asking for rest. As always, Dr. Jo will share how rest fits into the 6 pillars of wellness, why soreness isn't the best measure of progress, and how to design a smarter weekly routine with space to breathe, restore, and still move forward. This isn't about slowing down, though. It's about training smarter, listening to your body, and learning to value the pause just as much as you value the push. Let's listen. Dr. Sabrena Jo, it is always so great to talk to you. We are talking today about, I think, a popular subject, certainly for my age group. I know for a lot of the people that you work with, but we're going to talk about recovery. And I think that's a big area. So let's just jump right in and talk about generally, recovery as we age. Maybe tell us what some of the biggest mistakes are as we get a little bit older. What mistakes do we make when we think about recovery after exercise?
Yeah, well, I'm really happy to talk about this because just the word recovery itself is kind of ambiguous. So we can drill down to what that actually means. But to answer your question about mistakes, one of the biggest mistakes I see is that people treat recovery like it's optional, or assuming that slowing down means you're falling behind. And in reality, recovery is where the progress happens. So many of us, older adults included, who are incredibly disciplined about their workouts, might overlook rest, hydration, nutrition, or sleep, all of which are vital to restoring muscle tissue and replenishing our energy. And another mistake is underestimating how long recovery takes. As we age, muscle protein synthesis, which is just another way to say muscle growth or muscle repair, that slows down a bit, and connective tissue becomes less elastic, and inflammation can linger in our bodies longer. And so that word inflammation is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In this context, let's describe inflammation as the stress that occurs in muscle tissue as well as tendons and ligaments after you do exercise and physical activity. Perhaps you've had the experience of doing a hard workout and then the next day you feel kind of stiff, maybe swollen, maybe sore. Those things are related to inflammation. And so the older that we get, the longer that tends to last in the body. And so what worked in our 30s doesn't always work the same way in our 60s in terms of recovery.
Yeah.
So the good news is that with smart training and really, paying attention to your programming, Um, Things like alternating high and low intensity days, prioritizing strength and flexibility, and getting enough sleep. With doing those things, our bodies can still adapt beautifully at any age.
That's so helpful. I like that because recovery is where the progress is made. I think that's just a really interesting way of thinking about it. We hear all the time about leg days, and we hear about arm days, and we hear these various kind of ways to break up our exercise routine. But maybe we're not always thinking about rest days, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about that.
And the term rest days, in my world, doesn't mean that you're doing absolutely nothing. Um, so again, many people hear rest day and they think it means, sitting on the couch all day. But rest days don't have to be sedentary days where you're not moving at all. Because what we know is that movement actually helps with recovery, but just in a different way. So gentle activity like walking, stretching, or gentle yoga keeps circulation flowing, and it helps ease the stiffness in sore muscles, and it maintains mobility. And in addition to those physical things that I just described, a rest day can also be mental, like mental recovery, like taking time for quiet relaxation, even an emotional or mood reset. So the goal is balance, like listening to your body and giving it what it needs to come back even stronger the next time.
So when we think about rest days, is that the same as, well, maybe define for us what active and passive recovery are, and then weave that into this answer about, are we alternating even further on rest days, active recovery and then passive recovery, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so the term active recovery is where you're doing some type of gentle, light activity. And passive recovery, people use that terms often when they're thinking about literally doing nothing. And I think there was a time, maybe decades ago, where maybe that was the recommendation. Well, you worked hard yesterday, so you don't really need to do anything today. And maybe because you're stiff or sore, and you're going to basically just take a couch day, and then you're going to get back into your physical activity tomorrow. And that, taking those couch rest days are passive recovery. And what we know from the evidence is that being completely sedentary on those rest days is actually more of a health risk, because for the reasons that I described a little bit earlier about moving your body invites more circulation, both for the cardiovascular system, but also for the brain, and then the tissues that make up, your soft tissues. So the muscles and the tendons and the ligaments. So one of the things that a person can do to try to understand the benefits of this is, if you've ever done a physical activity that kind of stressed you beyond your normal means so that you actually were sore the next day or maybe the next 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Remember perhaps a time when you had to move, like you had to go about your day and walk down to the mailbox or do laundry or, garden, whatever it was. And you actually felt better while you were doing it and shortly after you were doing it, because it helped relieve some of the stiffness and the soreness. So think of the active recovery is just light, gentle movement that keeps you moving and keeps some of that soreness in check. I will say, though, I'll be very honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing for the soreness reduction is time. While you're moving, being gently active, you're going to feel better just because of the things that I described. But when you stop doing that activity and you sit back down on the couch for a while, you're still going to be sore and stiff. It just takes time for the body to heal and adapt. And sometimes for some people, that's 24 hours. Sometimes it's 24 to 72 hours. So it's an individual thing. And usually as the decades progress, that healing recovery time takes longer.
We talked just recently about the 6 pillars of wellness, and you did such a good job at really giving us a kind of a foundation of what the six pillars represent. And I really have been thinking about that. You prompted me to really dive into it, at least in my own mind, and think about this a little bit more. And I want to have you talk a little bit about this idea of recovery, particularly a gentle recovery, how that supports the six pillars of wellness, because this is all going to come together for everybody.
Well, I love talking about these six pillars.
Yeah.
So
That's really a great subject.
we'll start with my favorite, which is physical activity, of course. So interestingly, something that I've already described, that one thing we know is that being completely sedentary carries health risks.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why light activity, even on rest days, is recommended. So even gentle stretching or walking counts. And I feel like I've pretty much covered that already in just our previous conversation. But the next pillar is nutrition. So refueling with adequate protein and healthy complex carbs and water, or hydration, however, the fluids that you like to drink. Doing that after exercise aids tissue repair. So paying attention to proper nutrition on those rest days, and if we're honest, all days really are important. That will help in your creating that room for progress that occurs while you're resting. And then the next pillar we can talk about is sleep. Prioritizing recovery routines promotes deeper and more restorative sleep because it helps the parasympathetic nervous system do its job. And the parasympathetic nervous system is the one responsible for relaxation. Some people like to call it the rest and digest system. So when you get adequate sleep, and also when you're prioritizing those rest days in your training program, then that actually leads to better sleep. So those two are very closely intertwined. Another pillar is stress management. So similar to sleep, rest and recovery help regulate the parasympathetic nervous system. This improves mood, makes us less irritable, and it makes us more resilient, honestly, when stressors come our way. So your ability to integrate that rest and recovery will help with stress management. And another pillar is social connection, which again is one of my favorites. So if you think about how you can incorporate social connection into this rest and recovery, when you're focusing on light activity on those rest days, then do it with others. Like take a group walk or take a gentle yoga class. These types of things can foster belonging and accountability with others when you're trying these new healthy lifestyle behaviors. And then lastly, one thing I perhaps is a little overlooked, I think, and not talked about a lot is the reducing risky behaviors pillar. Because if you think about it, when we're well rested and when we're emotionally balanced, so our mood is good, we're less likely to make poor health decisions like over-consuming or over-drinking. And the opposite of that is also true, such that if we're feeling fatigued or irritable, we tend to crave nourishment from very hyper-palatable foods like sugary, high-fat snacks or alcohol. So that when we're well-rested, we're well-recovered, we're not as likely to reach for those types of unhealthy snacks or behaviors just because we're in a better, mental state and mood state. So again, I'll just say that recovery isn't the opposite of progress. It's one of the key foundations that allows thriving in all the other pillars.
Just as a reminder to everybody, our most recent episode of Live Long Better with Dr. Sabrena Jo touches on the six pillars. Go back and check that one out for more information. We, of course, are going to be talking more and more about the six pillars. It's so helpful to hear this. I think one of the things that jumps out at me, too, is, when I think about risky behavior and I think about how to mitigate that through sleep and stress management and even movement, it ties back to what you talked about in that previous episode, and that's motivation. We're less likely to come up with excuses because we're feeling a bit more rested. We're more able to kind of jump in and participate and do some of this gentle physical activity. And I thought that's important. It bears repeating, perhaps. So maybe touch a little bit on this idea of motivation, because I think that's also fundamental in all of this with regard to the pillars.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we talked about was this concept of autonomy, doing things that you choose to do because you want to do them. And people are more likely to stick to plans if they're excited about doing them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can recall times in your life when you've been fatigued or irritable, just feel sleepy, like you don't want to move your body, because that takes energy. And so the more rested and well recovered you are, the more likely you're actually looking forward to your next bout of movement. So again, that ties into that autonomy piece, because when we're trying to push beyond what is like healthy, like if we're thinking about doing, let's say, something that's high intensity, but we're still sore, we're not quite recovered, we're less likely to want to do it. And if we still do it and push through, then we're setting ourselves up for the risk of injury. So again, it's important to pay attention to the body and how we feel.
Let's take a quick pause right here, not to rest, but to reflect. Dr. Sabrena Jo says this so well, and I want to repeat it. Recovery is where the progress is made. So far, we've heard Dr. Sabrena Jo refer to the important 6 pillars of wellness, how being completely sedentary brings health risks, and Dr. Jo has broken down the science of recovery, telling why it's not a luxury. It's part of the work. Whether you're walking more, lifting weights, or managing daily stress, the ability to bounce back is what builds resilience over time. And now, in the second half of our conversation with Dr. Sabrena Jo, we'll go even deeper into practical strategies. How many rest days do you really need? What does recovery, active recovery especially, look like for someone in their 60s or 70s? And how do you train smarter, not harder, for the long haul? Let's get back to it. Dr. Sabrena Jo, the Senior Director of Science and Education at the American Council on Exercise, is our ongoing guest, of course, and expert on our Live Long Better series. Dr. Jo, it's always so great to speak to you about these subjects. I want to talk for just a second about, kind of, you can touch on this briefly because we have talked about it before, but that's the impact of cortisol and what it means, particularly as we're aging, and what exercise does to kind of blunt that.
Yeah, well, when we think of cortisol, that's a stress hormone. And that's one of the things that if it's elevated highly over time, we can get into trouble with risk for disease, like cardiovascular disease, for example, is just one of them. But exercise is one of the most effective stress regulators that we have. Interestingly, it temporarily raises cortisol during the activity, which is perfectly normal, but it helps to lower baseline levels over time. So your body is exposed to the exercise form of cortisol elevations. And then when you come off of that, the body's better able to maintain over time its normal homeostasis. So as I mentioned, it's important to keep cortisol levels at a normal baseline, because chronically high cortisol is linked to inflammation, sleep disruption, and muscle loss. And we've already talked about these things are very interrelated to performing well and this recovery piece. So for older adults, regular movement helps recalibrate the nervous system, helping to make sure that there's that proper balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And it helps promote relaxation and better mood. But the key is moderation. So too much high-intensity exercise can actually backfire by keeping cortisol levels elevated. too high for too long. So again, just mixing in restorative movement like gentle stretching or walking or light cycling or swimming, whatever your favorite thing to do is to unwind and have light activity. These things tend to balance out uh, the high stress, high anxiety, high intensity, sorry, not anxiety. Hopefully it's not promoting anxiety.
Yeah.
The high stress, high intensity with the lower intensity light activity things to help balance out the nervous system. And the term high cortisol, I think sometimes is a buzzword and people tend to focus on that, but really if you're just paying attention to getting adequate exercise and then interspersing it with appropriate rest, you're going to be fine. Your body will take care of itself.
We have this myth around rest, perhaps, and I want to talk about the dichotomy, perhaps, that exists around this idea that rest equals lazy, when in fact rest equals strength. Give us some tips about shifting the mindset so that we're really focused on this idea of rest and recovery, leading to this progress that you talk about, and really just generating this strength that we need, that all of us need.
Well, it starts with redefining what success looks like. For a person who thinks that be restful means lazy. So if we view health as sustainable vitality rather than just constant pushing and constant output, then rest logically becomes part of that equation. So I often tell clients, you don't get stronger during the workout itself. You get stronger by rebuilding your tissues after the workout. That's when the body adapts. So rest isn't taking away from your progress, it's making room for it. So when we embrace that, we begin to see recovery as an act of self-respect and long-term investment in our well-being. So it's helpful to think of rest and recovery as part of your training program.
I love that. An act of self-respect. That's really a wonderful way of putting it. As we train, we're doing this for ourselves, we're doing it for others, but it's out of respect for our well-being that really this comes into play. That's just a really wonderful way of putting it. You always make me think, and I know our audience feels the same way. I want to ask you a little bit about designing a weekly wellness kind of plan that has this built-in recovery. What should we think about, especially in our 50s, 60s, 70s, that, is all about, exercise, but making sure to not ignore the idea of recovery?
Sure. So I'm going to give you an example of what a balanced week might look like.
Good.
And
Perfect.
and then we might talk about ways in which we need to individualize this a little bit. But let's just start off with the ideal. Because everyone's an individual, so nothing that I say is going to work for every person. But if I had to kind of come up with the ideal plan, so there were no restrictions on anyone's time or finances or their ability to do these things, I would say 3 days of strength training a week to preserve your muscle and your bone density.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 3 days a week of moderate aerobic activity. So that could be whatever you enjoy doing. So brisk walking or swimming or cycling or pickleball, whatever it is that gets your heart pumping.
Yep.
I would say daily mobility or flexibility work. Even just 10 minutes, just to move the body and it can be gentle about it. And then I would say at least one intentional recovery day that includes this light activity, this stretching or social recreation that we've been talking about. So the key is variety. So too much intensity without recovery can lead to fatigue or injury, while too little challenge can limit your progress if your progress is to increase your fitness. So you can think of your week as a rhythm where, stress and rest, challenge and restoration. That's that would be the ideal plan.
Wonderful. Dr. Sabrena Jo, it's always so great to talk with you. I want to wrap up, but I have a few just rapid fire questions for you that I know are on our audience's minds as I hear from our audience about some of these subjects. And I want to have you just, top of mind, give us just your assessment as to what some of the best ways to kind of treat some of these new rules of recovery. So quickly, just tell us what's more important for recovery, sleep or stretching?
I'm going to say sleep.
Okay. Good. Okay. Our next one, true or false? Soreness means you had a good workout.
False.
Uh-huh.
We can talk about that, why that is.
We will be
Okay.
talking about that ongoing. Absolutely. So what is the one recovery habit that you wish people over age 50 really took seriously? The one recovery habit.
Well, it's going to come from the answer that I gave before is sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a person can really nail down their sleep hygiene and get a good sleep schedule going, and your body knows to look forward to that, like every night, like I'm going to get some deep restorative sleep. I think that's if you haven't figured that out yet, that's the very first place to look. Because a lot of times clients will come to me and we'll talk about all the different lifestyle factors. And if their sleep is a mess, the rest of their life is a wreck. And so we really try to focus in on sleep for the reasons that we talked about in this podcast, but many other reasons that good sleep is related to other health issues.
Okay, so a question is kind of a follow-up to our rest equals strength discussion. I want to have you talk a little bit about the best ways to unwind after a long day. Is it taking a walk? Is it just getting a quick nap, or something else?
Unwind after a long day, to me, is doing something with my mind and body that had nothing to do with what I was doing the earlier in the day. So that might mean taking a walk. It might mean playing with my dogs. It might mean reading a fiction novel that I'm into. It sometimes looks like watching a favorite TV show with my husband. Yeah. So I think it's just, if I have to give a recommendation, it would be to do something that takes your mind and puts it in a different frame than what you'd been doing all day, to introduce some novelty and, just to disconnect, especially if the things that you did all during the day, perhaps work, were stressful.
So final rapid fire question for you. And I asked this one because I really am in just complete agreement with you on the subject, and that is this idea of community. What's the best way to get in this idea of rest equals strength, but still being part of a community?
Yeah. Well, we only have so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
And I think most of us spend a lot of our time doing the things out of necessity, whether that's working, grocery shopping, laundry, what have you. But our leisure time, our downtime, if we are able to spend that with the people that we love and other people in our community, then we're winning. But I will say that takes effort. Like, it's something you have to think about, and it's not going to happen unless you make an effort to do it. Planning, kind of looking at your week ahead and planning for some of social time with others might be needed if that doesn't come naturally to you. Like for me, I'm very much of an introvert, so I really have to think about making time for family and friends, but it's well worth it.
Dr. Sabrena Jo, Senior Director of Science and Education at the American Council on Exercise. Always so great to talk to you during these episodes of Live Long Better. Thank you for all that you do for our community and for this idea of fitness and wellness, especially as it comes to training and resting, because I do think that sometimes we overlook that stuff. And we're going to get into more of these subjects as we dive deeper into our Live Long Better episodes. But thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Paul. It was great to be with you, and I can't wait for the next one.
My thanks to Dr. Sabrena Jo for being here with us today, as always, and reminding us that rest is not a step back, it's a step forward. Recovery isn't a sign of slowing down. It's a sign you care enough to keep going with strength, with intention, and with a body that supports you in doing what you love. Thanks again for joining us today on Live Long Better, Live Longer, Age Better, our brand new fitness feature from the Not Old Better Show and the American Council on Exercise, featuring Dr. Sabrena Jo. We're so grateful for her time. To hear more from our Live Long Better fitness series and from Dr. Sabrena Jo, explore our full catalog of interviews and wellness episodes. Head over to notold-better.com and stay connected with us on social at Not Old Better on Twitter, X, and Not Old Better on Instagram. This is a production of NOBS Studios. I'm Paul Vogelsang. Let's keep moving smart, aging strong, and remembering sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is rest. So be well, be better. Let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast. Thanks, everybody. I will see you next time.